Rain fell in jagged sheets over the city, slicing through the night like knives. Neon lights flickered in puddles, their reflection trembling with a life of its own, as if the ground itself remembered secrets no one else dared whisper. In the alleys, shadows stretched long and lean, curling around the corners of abandoned buildings, hiding in the spaces between despair and decay. The city had a pulse of its own, a rhythm that Ethan Cole could feel in the marrow of his bones. Each drop of rain hitting the asphalt, each distant siren, even the faint scuff of rats in the gutters. It all seemed orchestrated by an invisible hand, guiding him towards something he did not yet understand. Ethan moved silently, hood drawn low over his pallid face. His skin had grown almost translucent in the past weeks, pale from avoiding the sun. He had stopped counting the days. Daylight had become irrelevant, a distant memory from a life that no longer belonged to him. The city had become both sanctuary and prison, a labyrinth of wet streets, abandoned buildings and secret passageways only he seemed able to navigate. He knew the danger that lurked in the darkness, though he could not fully comprehend it yet. The shadows remembered. They watched, they waited, and they were patient. For months Ethan had felt it, a calling, a pulse at the edges of perception, a presence that whispered in the storm, tugged at the corners of his mind, and refused to let him rest. Nights were the worst. The city's alleys transformed into something sinister, as if each brick and puddle, every discarded newspaper or overturned barrel, hid eyes that followed him. Something was alive here, something ancient and observant, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. And tonight he was sure the moment had come. He paused before a broken storefront. The glass was shattered in jagged splinters, glinting like broken teeth in the dim light. A movement inside caught his eye, a shimmer, a shadow that didn't belong. Ethan's heart thundered, but not with fear. This was what he had been searching for, the dark presence that had haunted him, calling his name through storms and nightmares. For months he had chased rumors, fragments of urban legend, whispers of those who disappeared in the night and were never found. And now it was here. The air smelled of wet asphalt and something fouler, an undercurrent of rot and iron that made his stomach twist. As he stepped closer, the shadow coalesced into a figure, a man perhaps human once, but now malformed in a way that made Ethan's blood run cold. Its eyes were black pits, endless and glistening, reflecting nothing yet seeming to know everything. The figure tilted its head and spoke, voice like cracking ice that made the hairs on his neck rise. "You've come," it said. "Do you know why you walk these streets at night, Ethan Cole?" Ethan swallowed hard. He had tried to ignore the calling, the whispers in the storm, the faint cries of the city itself. But they had only grown louder. I don't know," he managed to stammer. The words felt weak, meaningless in the presence of something so overwhelmingly alive, so ancient. "You seek answers," the figure continued. "Answers you are not prepared to hear, and yet you cannot stop. You are like me, a child of the darkness, drawn to it, feared by it, yet made for it." The walls around him seemed to breathe, leaning inward, as if the city itself had noticed his presence. Shadows dripped from the walls, curling like fingers around his legs, seeking, probing. Ethan's reflection in a puddle at his feet shifted. It was not his own face he saw, but something twisted, with eyes black as night and lips twisted into a grin too wide to be human. "You will learn," the shadow whispered, stepping closer. "Darkness is not just the absence of light. It is alive. It waits, it feeds, and it remembers everything." The figure dissolved into smoke before him, leaving only the echo of its words. Ethan felt a chill run through his body, as if the rain itself had turned to ice. He knew, without question, that his life as he had known it was over. Somewhere in the city a force had marked him, and it would not rest until he understood its power and the price it demanded. Ethan began walking again, faster now, compelled by something beyond understanding. Memories pressed in on him. Memories of his mother warning him as a child, her voice trembling. "The shadows are hungry. Ethan, some things are better left unseen." He had laughed then, dismissing her as overly cautious. Now her words resonated in his mind with a terrifying clarity. He had never truly listened, and now he could not escape. He turned a corner and nearly collided with a man. His clothing hung in tatters, skin pale as ash, eyes hollow and empty. The man stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, "They know you've come. You cannot hide." Before Ethan could respond, the man disappeared into the mist, as though he had never existed. The city was swallowing him, step by step, memory by memory. Ethan pressed on, guided by an instinctual pull toward an abandoned subway station. Rusted tracks gleamed beneath the dim, flickering lights. The station smelled of mold and rust, with an undercurrent of something metallic, blood or decay. He couldn't tell. Each step he took echoed in the tunnels, bouncing off walls that seemed impossibly high, like the city above had twisted downward to trap him. There at the end of the platform he saw it again, the shadow. It had grown taller, impossibly thin, its black eyes gleaming in the darkness. It gestured, beckoning him forward. Ethan obeyed, as if the shadow's will had become his own. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, walls slick with black liquid that shimmered faintly. He felt the city's pulse here in its purest form, a living, breathing darkness that had existed long before humans had populated its streets. "You are ready," the shadow said. Its voice echoed across the cavern. "But understand this, every step forward is a choice. Every choice consumes you. The answers you seek are not kind. They demand sacrifice, and often the cost is more than your mind can bear." Ethan's reflection in the puddles on the cavern floor shifted again, showing faces he did not know, their eyes wide with fear. Their terror was familiar. Their pain was familiar. The city had stored it, remembered it, and now it was being offered to him. He felt his knees weaken, a wave of nausea and vertigo sweeping through him. He understood that the city was not a place, but a sentient trial, and he was its newest subject. Every sound echoed, drips of water, distant scraping, whispers that spoke directly to his mind. He saw visions of people lost in alleys, consumed by darkness, of fires swallowing streets, of shadows that walked in human form and fed on despair. The cavern seemed alive, breathing with all the memories of the city. And Ethan realized that nothing above ground had ever been real. The city had always existed in the dark, and he had now stepped fully into it. For the first time, Ethan felt the pulse in his own veins, synchronized with the city's. He did not know whether this connection would save him or destroy him. The shadow dissolved once more, leaving him alone in the cavern, surrounded by the black liquid that reflected not light, but infinite possibilities, all dark and waiting. And yet, despite fear, despite nausea and terror, he stepped forward. He had to know what lay deeper in the darkness. He had to confront what was calling him. The journey had begun. The air in the cavern was heavy, thick with a damp, metallic scent that made Ethan's lungs burn. Every step he took echoed endlessly, distorted as though the very walls were mocking him. Shadows clung to the edges of his vision, moving independently of any light source. They were not mere absences of illumination. They were alive, writhing, watching, learning. With every heartbeat, Ethan could feel the city pressing inward, its presence tangible, like a hand on his chest, squeezing. He pressed on, compelled by a force he could not resist. The shadows whispered, murmuring in tongues older than the streets above, a language that felt familiar and alien all at once. "Ethan, follow. You belong." The words seeped into his mind, twisting around his thoughts, eroding the boundaries between fear and curiosity. He had never felt anything so intoxicating, so utterly consuming. The tunnel widened, and before him stretched an enormous underground plaza, unlike anything he had seen. The walls were slick with black liquid, reflecting distorted images of the ceiling far above, as though the cavern itself was a mirror to some other, darker world. Figures moved within the reflections, humans, perhaps, but their forms flickered, limbs bending in impossible angles, eyes burning with unnatural light. When Ethan tried to focus, the figures vanished, leaving only the cruel pulse of the city and the whispering shadows. As he moved forward, a sudden scream shattered the silence. It was human, raw, and full of terror, but it was layered, almost as though hundreds of voices screamed simultaneously through a single mouth. Ethan froze. He had heard echoes of suffering, Before, ghostly remnants in the alleyways above, but nothing like this. Something in him recognized it, and he realized with a cold certainty that the city had been storing these moments of horror for years, centuries even, and now they were pressing through the walls, reaching him. He followed the sound, descending another spiral. Staircase into darkness so profound that the puddles beneath his feet swallowed what little light he carried. At the bottom, he found a room vast enough to house a cathedral, its walls moving subtly as if breathing. And there in the center stood a figure, tall, faceless, draped in writhing black cloth that seemed to move with a life of its own. Ethan recognized it immediately, the shadow that had first called to him. But this time it was no longer alone. Surrounding it were dozens of smaller forms, humanoid yet twisted, their limbs stretching and folding unnaturally, eyes gleaming with faint malevolence. "You have come far," the central figure said, voice like ice breaking across stone. "Few endure the first calling, and fewer still are prepared for what lies beyond. But you are different. You are already touched by the darkness, and it hungers for what you may give." Ethan's knees trembled. He could feel the weight of every life the city had claimed, pressing down on him, the countless deaths, betrayals, and secrets accumulated over centuries. Faces swirled in the black liquid beneath him, screaming silently, their eyes accusing, their mouths opening without sound. He realized then that this darkness was not merely around him, it was inside him, encoded into his very being. The calling had always been a summons to awaken something that was already part of him. I don't understand," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the cavern. "What am I supposed to do?" "Understand," the shadow replied. "Accept or be consumed. Darkness is not an enemy. It is a mirror. It is the truth of all you fear and all you desire. You cannot run from it. You cannot hide. And yet it will not destroy you unless you refuse to see." A sudden motion at the edge of his vision drew his attention. One of the smaller figures had separated from the circle, crawling along the wall like a spider. It paused, looking at him directly, and Ethan felt an involuntary shiver. The thing reached out a long skeletal hand, and memories that were not his own surged into his mind, scenes of fire consuming a city, children screaming, adults writhing in panic, shadows consuming flesh, and people staring into black pits that reflected only despair. Every memory felt visceral. Every scream echoed in his chest as though it had been trapped there for centuries. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping, overwhelmed. His own fears and regrets rose to the surface, intertwined with the horrors the city forced into his consciousness. Faces from his past appeared, his mother's, his father's, the people he had once loved or ignored, all twisted by anguish, distorted into reflections of the darkness he had never allowed himself to see. The cavern pulsed with their suffering, and Ethan understood that this was a trial, a test of his capacity to endure, to accept the unrelenting truth of the world beneath the city. The shadow advanced slowly, its presence suffocating. "Do you understand yet?" it whispered. "Do you know why you were drawn here? You carry the darkness inside you, Ethan. You were always its vessel. The city has waited for you to awaken, and now you must decide, will you embrace it, or will it consume you utterly?" Ethan felt something snap inside him, a mixture of fear, fascination, and a dark longing he had never acknowledged. He realized that for years he had been drawn to the city, to its streets, to its secrets, not just by chance, but because the darkness had chosen him. The shadows had recognized the void within him, the hunger, the capacity to witness what others could not endure. And now he could no longer resist. He rose to his feet, trembling, and stepped toward the central figure. The smaller forms recoiled, screeching silently, folding into the walls. The cavern seemed to exhale, and the black liquid on the floor surged, coiling around his feet like living tendrils. He felt a pulse in his veins, matching the rhythm of the city itself, and a terrifying exhilaration surged through him. This was no longer just fear, it was power, raw and ancient. "You will see," the shadow said, its faceless head tilting slightly, that embracing the darkness is not destruction. It is. You will bear witness to everything. Remember everything, and in time, you will command what others fear. Visions began to flood his mind. The history of the city, hidden beneath its streets. Every betrayal, every murder, every whispered lie and secret kept in shadow. He saw himself as a child, alone in his room. The shadows creeping along the walls, waiting. He saw people he had passed on the streets above. Their secrets, their lies, their hidden desires, all laid bare before him. Every memory, his own and others, merged into a vast tapestry of human weakness and darkness. And he realized he had become part of it irrevocably. Hours or perhaps days passed. Time had no meaning in the cavern. The shadows spoke continuously, filling his mind with whispers, revealing truths he could barely comprehend. And yet, through it all, he felt a sense of clarity, a terrible, intoxicating understanding. The city, the darkness, the memories, it was all one, and he was now inextricably linked to it. Finally, the faceless figure withdrew slightly, allowing Ethan a moment to breathe. He was no longer merely a man. He was something more, something bound to the pulse of the city, to its hunger and memory. The shadows no longer seemed to threaten him. They welcomed him, guiding him deeper into the labyrinthine heart of the underground realm. "You have begun," the figure whispered, "but the journey is far from over. There are layers yet to uncover, horrors yet to confront, and truths that will break your mind if you do not hold fast. Remember this, Ethan Cole. You are no longer merely human. You are a witness. You are a keeper, and soon you will see what waits at the edge of all shadows." Ethan stepped forward into the deeper darkness, knowing with a chilling certainty that there was no turning back. The city had claimed him entirely, and he would never walk its streets the same way again. The air grew thick with an oppressive weight as Ethan moved deeper into the city's underworld. The cavernous halls seemed endless, walls slick with black liquid that rippled with every heartbeat. Shadows clung to him, brushing against his skin, whispering ancient secrets in tongues he almost understood. Every step echoed with the city's memory, reverberating through his bones, until he could no longer tell where he ended and where the darkness began. The faceless figure awaited him in a grand chamber, the size of a cathedral. Its countless eyes flickered across its body, appearing and vanishing in the black folds of its form. The smaller humanoid shadows had assembled in concentric circles, their distorted limbs bent in impossible ways. Their gaze fixed upon Ethan. The figure's voice shattered the oppressive silence, echoing like a chorus of ice cracking over a frozen lake. "You have endured," it said. "You have seen the city's memory, its hunger, its suffering. But endurance alone does not grant understanding. To walk truly among the shadows, you must become what you were always meant to be." Ethan's knees buckled under the weight of the revelation. He had witnessed horrors beyond imagination, cities consumed by fire, shadows devouring flesh, humanity stripped to its raw, trembling core. Every scream, every betrayal, every secret that the city had stored was seared into his mind. His own memories intertwined with those of the city, creating a tapestry of anguish and longing that threatened to tear him apart. What am I meant to be?" he whispered, his voice trembling. The figure leaned closer, faceless head tilting, its presence pressing into Ethan's mind. "You are the witness. You are the keeper. You are the pulse of the city. The darkness made manifest in the flesh of one who can endure, embrace it, or be consumed entirely." The shadows surged around him, coiling like living tendrils. Ethan felt them merge with his skin, seep into his veins, threading through his mind and body. Pain lanced through him, sharper than any blade, deeper than fire, but beneath the agony a cold clarity emerged. He felt the city's heartbeat synchronize with his own, every street, every alley, every flickering neon light above echoing inside him. He was no longer an observer. He was part of the living, breathing darkness. Visions assaulted him, countless human lives, entire generations, all their fears, lies, and sins laid bare. He saw his mother, his father, friends he had loved or ignored, all twisted in suffering, their eyes accusing. He saw himself as a boy, alone in his room, the shadows creeping along the walls, whispering promises he had never fully understood. And finally, he saw what the shadows wanted him to see, the raw truth of the city itself, its memory, its hunger, and the eternity it had waited to reveal. "You are ready," the faceless figure intoned. "You will not only witness the darkness, you will command it. You will hold the memories of all who have walked these streets, and those who will follow. But know this, power comes at a cost. Humanity must be shed piece by piece until only the Watcher remains." Ethan's vision blurred. He felt his skin tighten, his limbs elongate slightly, as if the darkness itself reshaped him. He was no longer fully human, yet not entirely shadow. He was something in between, a vessel for the city's memory and hunger. And with the transformation came understanding. Every whisper, every shadow, every flicker of neon above and puddle below was now part of him. He could feel the fears of the living on the streets above, the secrets buried beneath, and the endless cycle of human ambition and despair. And then he understood. The city had never been merely a place. It had been alive, sentient, waiting for someone who could survive the first trials, endure the memories, and accept the truth. He was the culmination of that waiting. "You see now," the shadow said, voice softening, almost reverent. "You are not its master, but its vessel. The city does not obey. It consumes, it remembers, it judges. You are its eyes, its voice, its conscience. And you will never walk among men the same again." Ethan opened his eyes, black as void, reflecting infinite shadows. He looked at the faceless figure and felt neither fear nor awe, only comprehension. The city's darkness was not evil. It was not malevolent. It simply existed, eternal, patient, and all-consuming for those who dared to witness it fully. And now he was one of them. A surge of movement caught his attention. The smaller shadows, once menacing, now bowed, coiling toward him in respect or submission. Ethan reached out and they responded, flowing around him, feeding his consciousness with centuries of knowledge, secrets and memories. He felt the weight of every choice ever made on these streets, every lie, every act of cruelty and compassion. And he understood the paradox. The city had recorded both sin and virtue, and it judged all equally, consuming neither entirely, but preserving all in the eternal darkness. He raised his hands, feeling the black liquid beneath his feet respond, tendrils of shadow rising to meet him. A faint smile touched his lips. For the first time since the calling began, he did not feel fear. He felt clarity, purpose, and power beyond human comprehension. The city had chosen him, and in return, he had chosen the city. Hours, or maybe days, passed, though time no longer had meaning. Ethan wandered through the endless halls, corridors, and chambers beneath the city. He no longer saw the shadows as threats, but as extensions of himself, reflections of the city's consciousness intertwined with his own. Every flicker of neon, every dripping water stain, every corner of darkness became a repository of knowledge and memory, feeding him, teaching him, shaping him. At last, he ascended to the surface. Rain still fell, jagged and relentless. Neon lights flickered over puddles, reflecting the city in fragments. And yet everything was different. Ethan's perception had changed. He could see the fears, desires, and secrets of those around him. He could sense the whispers of the city beneath the asphalt, behind the walls, in the foundations of buildings. He had become its watcher, its memory, its voice. The city stretched before him, alive and whispering, infinite in scope and darkness. And Ethan Cole, once a man hunted by shadows, now moved with purpose through the rain-soaked streets, part human, part darkness, entirely transformed. He was no longer merely a resident of the city. He was its keeper, its witness, its pulse, and he would never walk alone again. The shadows followed him as he disappeared into the night, silent, patient, eternal. And somewhere deep beneath the streets, the faceless figure observed, knowing the city's memory was safe, and that its vessel had embraced his destiny fully. Ethan paused on a deserted bridge, rain streaming down his face. For a moment he glimpsed a reflection in the water below. Black eyes stared back at him, infinite and unblinking. And he knew the truth. The darkness was not outside, it had always been within. And now it was complete. The city exhaled, alive, eternal, and waiting for the next soul foolish enough to wander into its embrace. And Ethan Cole walked forward, not as a man, but as the darkness incarnate.